We begin with breaking news out of the UK, where the London High Court has ruled the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda is legal. The planned deportation policy was suspended in June after a last-minute challenge. For more on this, let's bring in Harry Fawcett, who joins us live from the Royal Courts of Justice in London. Hello there, Harry. This certainly was a major test of a controversial policy, and the High Court has ruled in the government's favour. What was said in the judgment?
That's right. Lord Justice Lewis and Mr Justice Swift were considering a number of cases challenging this very controversial policy, and they have ruled that in principle the government's policy of immediately dispatching asylum seekers who've entered the United Kingdom to another country, to Rwanda, for processing and then potentially resettlement in that country if their asylum applications are deemed valid, that is a lawful thing to do, that it doesn't breach the Human Rights Act, and that it doesn't breach refugee policy either. And so that is now the judgment globally on this policy. But in the case of the 8 individual asylum seekers who've had their cases brought as part of this entire process, in which there have also been challenges from a union and from a number of refugee charities, in those 8 individual cases, they've been sent back to the Home Office, the Interior Ministry in the UK, because the court has deemed that their cases were not properly considered on their individual merits and the individual circumstances of the people involved. So if this judgment stands, that will mean that in each of these cases the government will have to prove that, but that it can potentially as of early next year start putting people on planes for Rwanda in this policy, which would see more than $140 million spent by the UK in Rwanda, and would see people being processed in a detention centre, holding centre there, and then potentially resettled there rather than the UK. That is something that the government has prioritised, saying it will be a deterrent to asylum seekers and migrants coming to this country, especially via the small boats that we've seen coming across the English Channel from France. It's something the Labour Party, the main opposition, has called immoral and has been challenged in the courts today.
Harry, what's next? Are there any other legal avenues?
There absolutely are. We are expecting whichever side had lost today would appeal, and I think that remains the case. We're waiting to hear in person from some of the charities involved in these challenges, but that was very much the expectation. Also seeing reports that there will be a hearing to determine the possibility of sending this on to the Court of Appeal within the UK in January. And then even if the road runs out in terms of appeals within the UK, there's also the possibility that it could go to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg as well. And that's where this becomes even more potentially controversial, because the European Court of Human Rights has the power to rule government policy unlawful. And so even if there were the kind of legislation that Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, was talking about last week, new legislation to make it clear that no asylum seeker coming through what is determined not to be a legal and safe route into the UK will be allowed to settle here, that could be overturned by the European Court of Human Rights as things stand. So and the Prime Minister has said all options are on the table, although he's been a bit more reluctant than some of his MPs to do this, will that mean that the UK might consider pulling out of the convention, out of the court altogether, which would have all sorts of other ramifications potentially in Northern Ireland in terms of the Good Friday Agreement as well. So a lot still to go on this very controversial issue, but a major decision made here in favour of the government at the High Court today.
Indeed, many moving parts to the story. Thanks for breaking it all down for us. Harry Fawcett in London.
To our radio in Pinduka, this is the English program desk. My name is, as usual, Jacques BOSCO. Tonight we have a special program. It's called, actually, the UK and Rwanda Asylum Seeker Scheme or Plan to Deport refugees or asylum seekers to Rwanda. And I'm going to partner in this show with my colleague. Her name is Sarah KAYINDE. And as well as you can see on our screen, we have a special guest. His name is Justin BAHUNGA, but you will get more in the upcoming second. Sarah, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you very much for having me on today, Jean-Jacques. As I was saying, my name is Sarah. I'm a young Rwandan diaspora who's interested in geopolitics, and we're here today with our guests, Mr. Justin BAHUNGA. So it's okay. I'll just introduce him.
Very good. Sarah, please introduce our guest, as you just said, Justin BAHUNGA, please.
Okay. So in front of us, we have Mr. Justin BAHUNGA. He's a former Rwandan journalist. He was a civil servant under the Rwandan Presidential Protocol Office and Foreign Affairs Ministry. He's also a former Rwandan diplomat in both Tanzania and Uganda prior to 1994. He also works with refugees. He's a refugee. He was a refugee in the UK and today a United Kingdom citizen. He's been trained in human rights advocacy in the United Kingdom. He works as a counselor and a mentor for newcomers and settlers in the United Kingdom as well. Politically, he is a former FDU president. That's a political party. And today, he's an active politician and a political analyst for the African Great Lakes and East African regions. And finally, though, he is an RTV in Pinduka tonight. He's our main guest. And today we will be talking regarding the Rwanda and UK asylum seekers plan and what's entitled in all of that. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So unless we have maybe omissed something, Mr. Justin BAHUNGA, that you can just touch and add on it. So other than that, so you are yours, you are ours, and the floor is yours. But Miss Sarah KAYINDE will be asking you some questions about this hot topic.
It is so interesting, you know. And first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a topic that's so very concerned to me because, as I said, when I worked in the UK, I worked with refugee communities from Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe, and the job was how to empower new communities. How do you help newcomers to feel home away from home? So thank you for inviting me for that. I feel very attached to this topic. And as to my introduction, I think you really read my mind. I can't add or remove anything. It's perfect.
Okay. You're perfect. Glad we got that right.
You're very much
Wonderful.
Right.
Okay, then we should head on into the questions. So we'll just dive in right in. Our first question is, if you could please describe to us, what is the United Kingdom and Rwanda's asylum seekers deal? What are the main components? Are there any? Yeah, we'll start
Excellent.
with that. What is the deal? Yes.
The deal is actually contained in a memorandum. It's called Migration Economic Development Partnership. Although when you read it, there is nothing economic development I find in it. But let's give it that name. It looks a little bit dodgy. But the key elements in it is that UK will be transferring asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing. And so it is that anyone entering the UK illegally, as you know, Jacques will tell you there is no illegal asylum seeker because they don't ask for a visa. You are running away from persecution, from war. But it is called illegally, so meaning actually it is anyone who comes to the UK seeking asylum protection. He is a candidate to be sent to Rwanda. And that means anyone of an age can be relocated. They call it relocated. We give a very nice word. Instead of saying transported or shipped to Rwanda, which is the one we normally use, they say relocation. And there are two exceptions for this. It is either Rwandan national or unaccompanied asylum seeking children. Only the two categories of people who are exempt from being taken to Rwanda for assessment. And what it means is that once you are taken to Rwanda, Rwanda will assess your application. If successful, then you will be integrated into society like we are in the UK or Canada or anywhere. Those who won't be accepted or seen to deserve, to merit protection, one of the ways is to send somebody to the original country, to country of origin, or use the existing national laws to have the person stay in Rwanda. So the second question would be is, if it is then how many? It would be an interesting question. How many? It is very important to know how many, because when to come to see the implications, then the numbers will matter.
Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, that was my additional questions. What are some of the implications of this plan, if you want to go into it? Thank you.
Yeah, probably, but this is probably the implication probably will come, if you don't mind, come a bit later. If I can describe what it is.
Okay.
And then we'll see what the implications about. The numbers will have implications, as I'll explain later. And because we come, can we accommodate it? So according to the memorandum, it is unlimited. There's the word uncapped. You can any number.
Oh.
But then the Prime Minister, in his declaration, he said it can be tens of thousands can be restored to Rwanda. That's his words. I chose his words because it looks very frightening, but I think it is important that I mention those numbers. When we come to implication for Rwanda, I think it's very important to know that number. But then, when we asked, for Rwanda, when the first intake, they were saying they had the capacity now for 100. Remember, they had this hotel for 100. And they said they could process 500 per year. And what is very funny, which doesn't add up, is that they say that during the trial period, 5 years, so the contract for 5 years, then they would have processed 1,000. So Doji, when they said in hundreds of thousands, and then I said the kind of capacity now for 100. So we can't know, and because the 5 year they can be renewed, so it can be indefinite. Nobody knows how long it is. 5 years initially 5. So they can be renewed, and they have to be discussed 1 year before the expiration of this one. So that's again, it looks to me to be dodgy. And I said the first thing is about migration, economic development partnership. What's the economic partnership? Is it the money they are going to give? But as I said, the upfront money which was given, we learn also is not in the memorandum. It is 120 million pounds. That's the upfront. But then it is, when you look in the papers and elsewhere, they tell you that the additional costs to the refugee, they talk of 12,000, the money for detention, for the detained before they have put on board, and also for their transport. It comes about 30,000 per refugee, and that is so much money that one of the members of parliament, who's a minister now, he said the cost is so high you could put one refugee in the UK in a 5-star hotel for 1 year. They should refugee. So, but what you have to know, again, it's important that you look to be surprised that the issue is not money. It is not moral values. It is not law. It's political, as we shall see later.
Yes, I think if you don't mind, I can add something, Sarah. So, what this was about in the UK, people should understand that their constitution is different from than others in elsewhere because they have what we call an unwritten constitution. It means some elements are written, like the Act of Parliament, like what you call the law cases are written under the common law, but they have what we call conventions and royal prerogatives, as well as academic authorities. Now, because the conventions, which are not written like customs and arrangement, they are not written anywhere, and they have been delegated to the executive, which means to prime minister and ministers. So if they abuse any of those arrangements, no one is going to question. Parliament is going to question at all because it's under that jurisdiction. So it's not written, it's not enforceable. It's only blameworthy. They can blame a minister and so on. So that's how the former Secretary of State for the Home Office or the Home Department, what we call the Minister of Interior, had to enter into this memorandum of understanding or an agreement, an international treaty, so that they can do whatever they want as long as they hijack UK's citizens, including, of course, those other states, bodies like Parliament or the court. Now, the issue, Mr. Bahunga will just give us what happened. It's because under the UK Constitution, any citizen can petition, can claim, can take the executive, the minister, to court in order to stop or to just petition or claim or stop any abuse of that government. So that's how things play in place. So people think, oh, why not Parliament doesn't stop the foreign the interior minister from doing that, or the government? No, it's how it goes. That's how it has to be stopped and go to the court. But Mr. Bahunga will just extrapolate more on that. So I hope Mr. Bahunga didn't jump into your area of expertise.
No problem. Thank you for the addition. But I think the other key element that you have taken into account, it is one-way ticket.
Oh.
It's one-way ticket to Rwanda. Huh. You can't come back unless the UK would be the one to ask for someone to be brought back. And for me, it makes a lot of sense, not sense to me, because I want to, it makes me a very bad reminder. I went to visit Ghana, and I went to see what they used to keep slaves before they were shipped to the Americas. And there was a gate called the Gate of No Return. That's why they would go through, quite into the ship.
Oh, you mean the slavery? The slavery.
Yeah, the slavery.
The slavery in America. To America.
Yes, it was called the Gate of No Return. So when you think of one ticket of no return ticket, it comes to my mind. It brings back the bad memory of what I saw.
It has the same level of symbolism.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
And that's the other point that you have to make to be understood is that the memorandum says that it is not a legally binding document. It is so the specific.
Could you expand on that part?
That this document, it is said in the memorandum of understanding under this deal that this document is not legally binding. So you can't take them with anyone to court for that. For if someone violated this memorandum, will not be taken to court. And there's no third party to it. If there's a problem, it would be asserted between themselves. There's no third party who could intervene to resolve the problem if anything happened. And again, when we see the implications, exactly, the implication is that once they have gone, there is no no mechanisms to address any violation of the human right of the asylum seeker once he's in Rwanda. And that comes to make the sense that one of the arguments that will be brought against taking people to Rwanda is that there's the inability to be able to follow and monitor and bring to account the Rwandan government if ever their rights are violated. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense.
That's the point that I think. And one other point, what I was saying, which I want to make about this agreement is, although it is said it is a way of trying to stop these malicious smugglers taking people, making a business out of people's misery, the fact of the matter is that it is used as a deterrent for anyone coming to the UK. So imagining that if you are a prospect and instead of going to the UK, you'll be taken 400,000 miles or 800,000 kilometers away, you'll be deterred from taking that risk. But there is a contradiction, because if you must have heard the Prime Minister saying that Rwanda is one of the safest countries in the world. A contradiction. You cannot pay deterrence when at the same time you say it's the best place to be. Again, a show that there's a bit dodgy. That the real issue.
Sorry, Mr. Bahunga, because we are in a discussion interaction. So you are trying to tell that you are referring to the Kiriba's refugee camp where Rwanda did attack and kill people in that refugee camps?
Yes, I mean there is on this issue there are so many differences. Part one, it's going to be the safest because, as we were saying, in February 19, 2018. The refugees in the Kiziba camp were shot at and 12 were killed when trying to protest. And many others were put in prison. But also a similar deal was done with Israel.
Yes.
To bring to Rwanda, and then for 4,000, all of them, almost, I think only 7 or left, went back through the same routes to Europe. Again, showing that, which people are saying, it can't be a good deterrence. And then you shall see when we are discussing the reaction of the civil servants here, which again is a very interesting question to see how a democratic system works, and that it is not really true to be a deterrence. And it pushes them actually far to go even further than that and say the whole issue behind it is this. It is the government in power, the ruling party now, when it was advocating for the Brexit, to leave the European Union, the key element that one votes is that they will call it, we shall be able to control our borders. We shall not be told by Brussels how to control our borders. Yes. That is one. So control our borders. And it also said that before Brexit, there was a kind of survey which was made. The 6% of the people were saying that migration was number one problem. So now, as I was saying, the issue is not cost. The issue is about winning votes. The entire trying to satisfy that fringe in the electorate who are anti-migration. And that's the whole point about it. When you say so that's what they're fighting for, and that's what nobody, Boris was done who brought it, but even the minister, the prime minister who replaced him, Sunak, is saying that project has to go ahead. The new Minister of Home Affairs minister, another lady, by the Indian who came from East Africa, who actually came running.
Suella Braverman, I believe. Her name is Suella Braverman.
Yeah, exactly. She was a refugee from Kenya. And her Pretty Patel was from Uganda, one of the people who were sent by Idi Amin. Sunak is from India. So So the whole point is that as a party, they have they want to present to the electorate that we are dealing with immigration. So even if it fails, which I want to say it, they have tried. Even if they had only one flight, the all dies out along the way. They to show we are tough on immigration.
They will have made
So-
happy the electorate.
And the slogan of the slogan of the conservative party is tough on crime, tough on immigration. So this is more a political maneuvering than
a political
any other
gesture rather than a plan with actual, deep
it's
roots
not.
and
I'm going to
whatnot.
tell you for a very innovative project which is going to enlighten the world, to be able to see a new program. That's it is all about.
I see.
That's all about.
So-
and then when they start, probably we should be able to see the reaction of different sections of the UK society. Because sometimes it's important that we make a distinction between the political party policy and the population. What the reaction? I think we shall have to see, if you don't mind, we're going to say what I have gathered. How did the pure population react to this program? And actually, they have done even more than even Rwandans. I mean, they have been more criticism of this policy than I have seen among the Rwandans, even outside.
That is very true.
Yeah. But then, if you don't mind, actually, probably, that's as the implications of how do I look at it? That the angle of political maneuvering, political scoring marks, than a well thought out, benevolent, good policy to save the world. No, it is not. And when we come to implication, which I think we have to see what we learn from this program, this policy, is the behavior of politicians, whether here or whether anywhere. That's something I think some of the lessons to learn. I think be interesting to see. However, in a developed country, however educated, the political animal in you will dictate other things until there is a checks and balances to make you fall in line. So perhaps when you come to lessons to learn, I think that probably would be something I want to bring along. But then probably the other element, I think probably, I don't know where the question is, where are we now? What was the process up to now?
Yeah, I think we are heading there, Mr. Justin Bahunga. That's where we are heading.
Excellent.
Yes. On my further questions, I just wanted to add a note where you said politicians and their policies are bringing out a lot of conversations. For example, Priti Patel and the other lady, Suella Braverman, like you said, they both come from backgrounds of immigrant families and backgrounds where they did need UK to take them in without having a system that would have taken them to a secondary location. So I thought that was a really interesting point. My second question that I have for you is, since the United Kingdom courts are involved in all of these, why were some of the refugees stopped from boarding to Rwanda at Heathrow International Airport? Or is that a JJ? Is that...
That's correct. Yeah, that sounds correct, because actually, if you want me to add what I want to say, so they had to hijack, it means to expedite this process, because they just want to please the voters. And then what they said, the deal was made in April 2022, April, you mean. So they want to send the first refugees, especially the 7th, to Rwanda by June 14th, 2022. It's just so quick, because they just want to do what they want to do. And then when they seek for an injunction from the court, from the High Court, the judge refused, and this was on June 10th. So this refugee will have gone or will have been embarked on June 14th. So what saved these asylum seekers was the interim measure done by the European Court of Human Rights. So that stopped the process at the airport, including the UK's citizens who were protesting there. And then this gave a chance to these people to appeal. Their refugee status process was undergoing, and then they had the chance to do what we call judicial review. It means like there were many organizations, I can tell them. There was one, it's called the Public of Commercial Service Union. It's just based in London. There was also the Detention Action. It's another non-profit organization. There was Care for a Callous, another organization. And then those asylum seekers from Syria, from Iraq, they also petitioned along this one, and it becomes a case, which I think was rendered on December 19th. No, January, I believe, 16th, suggesting that it was the court, the High Court has had the reason to render the judgment to be sent to Rwanda. Fortunately, in the UK, there are laws and regulations, so they had to appeal, and the appeal process was accepted, was entered, and now the appeal is, this case is under what we call the Court of Appeal. And even for people who would like to check that on the internet, the case itself is there. It's called R, which means Regina or the Monarch, AA, of course, and others against or versus the Secretary of State for the Home Department. That's how the case is called, and it's now under the Court of Appeal. So that I just want to know what happened. Yes, go ahead.
If I could have just a very quick question. I don't have a background in law. With these cases, does each individual that is being repatriated or sent to Rwanda, do they have a chance to take their case individually, or do they have to come together as a group in order to fight this?
Okay, so thank you. Now, there are many. There are more than 7. They are just like thousands. So, but they chose these 7 to be sent because they just said they want to get rid of them. So what this means, it means once you claim for asylum seeker, everyone has individual case under immigration law. But in this petition, even they can be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Even these organizations are just advocating, as Mr. Bahunga said, because of what you call the human rights, which is really practiced in those democratic countries. So they, in this case, different from the immigration case, this is the difference, is to stop the Ministry of Interior to send them to Africa. So all those refugee claimants are not part of this process. They are few, as I said. Actual refugees who are there, I believe they must be 7. I can see here. They are AAA Syria. It means there are 3 people from Syria. They are AHA means 3 from Syria, and AT, of course, it must mean 2 from Iran. So those are the refugees in this case, added to those organizations together. So, however, each individual can have his own defense lawyer, or they can just join by one. So that's how the case goes. And I have to remind our audience that this is what we call a constitutional case, where you have the right to petition to take the government, I mean the ministers, to court, which has started in the UK around 1885, especially because this is a case called Foreign Affairs / the executive, to make treaties and international agreement by which the parliament doesn't have any much say.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Is that fair enough? Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And perhaps add something.
To you, Mr. Bahunga.
Yeah, I add on something. Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques. It is very true that that's the 14th of April, signing of the agreement, a deadline for taking before the 14th. The refusal by the High Court and the Supreme Court that the plane, it was, they want to allow the plane to take off. And up to this 14th in the morning, I mean, it was 14th at night, both the High Court, the Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeal had said there was no problem in the plane taking off. And it was only that instruction. Actually, it was the lawyer of the Iraqi person who had applied to the European Court of Human Rights. And by the way, although the UK is no longer in the European Union, the European Court of Human Rights was put by European Council. So therefore, so that's why it can apply to them, even though they are out of the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was saying, that after they were stopped, then when he said that they could only the injunction was they cannot take somebody after the disclaimer after the delivery of the final decision by the domestic courts. That means it must be after the Supreme Court has made the decision. 3 weeks after that, that's when it can be taken. But now, the hearing was in September, and then in December 19th, you're talking about is that the High Court ruled that the policy was legal. The policy of sending people to Rwanda was legal. And of course, there was an appeal. When the appeal came, and then on the 16th of January 2023, the High Court allowed, in this ruling, allowed the claimants and only one organization is Refugee Action or refugee support, the one which allowed to appeal now against the lawfulness, the decision of the High Court that this policy is lawful.
So, in other words, what Mr. Bahunga is trying to say is that by having this appeal, it has stopped this refugee. And again, unless otherwise, it's gonna also, if they fail again, they have the right to appeal to the Supreme Court. And if they fail there, they can appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. So which will take, let's say, a couple of years. By then, maybe this conservative government will have forgotten about this scam, or they will have lost the elections, or things will have changed. So it's as Mr. Bahunga said, it's a matter of pleasing the voters by hoping even when it goes, they will have done what they have promised to the electorate. Thank you.
So I think on that one, perhaps I had to be there on that one. I think it's not probably very optimistic. We should not create, I think, false expectation from people that this is going to happen, so it might not work. But the key, what I was saying, Jacques, they are one, as we were saying, there is a pressure for something to happen. At least to have the first flight to go to Rwanda, because they have spent 120 million pounds, which were in a plant. And as we see, actually the civil servants, Minister of Foreign Affairs, had advised against this because they know there could be fraud. There's a risk of fraud, giving up 120 million upfront. And so now there is some part the people in Parliament, and including the former Prime Minister Boris, who want a Parliament to pass a law that would make it possible for the UK to ignore the final ruling of the European Court of Human Rights. But also, I mean, when you look at the judges, how they decided over the issue of a flight of cancelling the flight that was okay, and also that the Supreme Court and the High Court saying it is lawful, well, that way it was a public interest for the minister to take the decision. And also saying that to make the law, because they said the International Convention on Refugees, it only prevents people from sending someone to an insecure place. But that you can go to a place where there's security. That's why they insist on saying one is the safest. So it's actually to not to discourage people, but to know the realities of the fact that this can happen. And of course, what the remedy, the best I think option that you were saying, Jean-Jacques, I think if Labour Party came to power, if they came to elections, then if there was a new government, it's most probably, especially that is criticizing the policy, that actually it would change. It would change the course. And of course, there are also, and again, there are people within the Conservative Party who think this will be done before the next elections. Everything must be done. That this is before elections because they know because they know the problem. So there is a determination of the government in power, is the leadership, to want to please its electorate. And remember, I mean, this lady you are talking about, you pronounce her name better than I do. I heard it. So she said, actually, this policy was her dream. That sending.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yes, it was her dream.
Yeah. Actually, you are meaning the right-wing Conservative Party. Yeah, that's what you mean, including even Priti Patel. Those are what we call the right-wing Conservative Party.
I did have a question in regards to that. With the Conservative Party having to balance their voters, what their voters want, and what they would like in regards to policy. How is the law world and everyone dealing with what appears to be a double standards with the treatment of certain refugees versus, example, Ukrainian refugees? What are the things that are keeping some refugees away from the system and others as part of these, asylum seekers deal?
Again, I think the point is actually Ukraine is Europe. I mean, you know very well in terms of the geopolitics. It is attacking Ukraine is the turn of Europe. I mean, it is Europe fighting for its own interest rather than fighting for the goodness. That's what I think, or for the humanitarian whatever of Ukraine. I think it is a war of influence between the West and Russia. Whereas for Africa, for these others, there's no comparing. I think urgency or moral ground to do that. But that's why I'm going to say is very important not to put in the same basket when you look at, and if you want, maybe the section of the British public, in fact, to be able to balance when there's a tendency to generalize, and I think people are very generous, and the people who are accepted to these people, but there is a group, I think, within, and then we come to it within Europe and even America. How was Trump elected on the ticket of stopping immigration?
Yes.
All these movements, national movements in Austria, in Italy. So immigration has become a new threat. It's not the communism. It's no longer, it is after your communism, after terrorism. This is they have all exploited this new phenomenon of creating the fear of migration. But someone was saying, actually, the problem is not the migration, it is the fear of migration. That's causing. So when you come to Ukraine, again, I think you have to.
Mr. Justice Bahunga, if you don't mind, you are trying to say, of course, it's a double standard. So you can see these refugee claimants, mainly they are from Syria, they are from Iran, they are from Iraq, and Ukrainians are getting a good treatment. Refugees, they are welcome. So many scholars and the other commentators, they say, this also, that's what they tell to the executive. Why do you have to do double standard? Are you not discriminating these people? And even since they were in this country almost over 5 years, the new illegal migrant or illegal refugees have even quadrupled. So you cannot convince on this, as on this. At the same time, as you said, when UK exited from the European Union, England, which is a country, is a nation, and Wales, they voted Northern Ireland did vote also less than 50%. So there is this tendency of what we call conservative movement. Once it comes to immigration, they don't want people to come to their countries. So I think that's the meaning, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying actually, that's what I'm trying to explain. You have to take this situation, the UK, as a general trend in the West. I gave the examples of how Trump on the ticket of migration that's going to build the wall.
Build the wall.
So when you come, I think when you come to proximity, one of the things I think of the image of the third world countries is we are seen as people who are actually ever fighting. Fighting is actually become a part of the nature. So how would you explain, why don't you come to the basic and say, how is it 5 million Congolese have been killed or had died, whatever? It doesn't make any headlines. We could ask that question. Why is it not about why does it make headlines? What is happening? Someone was saying, actually, here was saying, there is more coverage of the refugees at Calais than 1,000 people dying in the Congo. So I think we have to tap into amount what the images created of these other countries. It is actually even if it's just for intervention, they have to save us against ourselves.
White savior.
So the other point is actually when you speak of you. By the way, it is in this the lawyers, they brought this in the argumentation that actually there's a discrimination as compared between Ukraine and Ukraine and these other refugees. And when you come to Ukraine, why Rwanda has invaded Congo? About dying. There is sanctions against Putin. Why don't do the same? That's why that's why I'm saying we should not look at this at just a moral or legal level. Look at a political level and explain why. Yeah.
A question to follow up as what could you predict as an outcome given the international criticism on that refugees deportation going from a Western democratic state to an African country whose reputation is known for ongoing human rights abuse and violations? And even though their Western sponsors attempt to cover for Rwanda for many years, it is no longer, their crimes are no longer hidden. So what do you feel the outcomes will when a state that claims to be democratic like UK does such a transfer?
Yes, thank you. Again, I think we have a point I want actually to mention. I don't want to call it positive. I think this case has exposed Rwanda more than any other thing we have done as Rwanda, for instance, from outside. Because of fighting the case to say people can't go to Rwanda because of violation of human rights, many people have known now the real state of Rwanda from anywhere. So that to prove that actually it is not that it could be a deterrent. Now we were saying, you are threatening, if you go there, you have got a problem. Number two is that it has allowed the lawyers, everybody else, to dig down, be interested in what is happening in Rwanda. I think that is a positive. And then political, as you know, is the changing of attitudes. Changing of attitudes is the key to political change. And of course, when we speak of politics, in the geopolitics, is a matter of interest. So when people realize there is a danger that continuing to support such a system is detrimental to their interests, then there'll be a problem. And that makes it to another point we were saying is, we come to the beauty, the beauty of democracy, that while we speak of national interest, sometimes the people are serving parochial or just personal political interests. In this case, if you look at how it is seen here, it doesn't look like in the service of national interest, but in the service of a small people who want power. What I was saying when the lesson you have to learn is that if it were in Africa, Rwanda, like the case now, Kagame didn't want to ask anyone why I don't know why it was done. But here now people have stopped a deal we were done by a prime minister, Minister of Home Affairs. Is it going on? And the problem on that one, I think, again, the beauty of democracy, I would probably add more to say what people say about this. But to say, and want to say, why will they continue? It will depend on the political cost, what they can get from this. The political cost will determine whether this government will abandon it or not. So now, when you look at I was saying that if you look from the head of the Her Majesty, he was a prince, now he's a king, he describing this policy as appalling. And of course, he was attacked that a lawyer normally is not allowed to interfere into the politics of the government, because the government, when you come into power, there's a policy you have to deliver, and the way I do to deliver, that's my problem. But then you have got two former prime ministers, former Minister Teresa, Prime Minister Teresa, and you have and then you have John Major. And John Major was very clear. He said, it is a cost, and when you are advising even the member of the cabinet, he said it is for your personal reputation of the cabinet, and reputation of the country. That should be stopped. That should stop him, and that's important. The minister Andrew Mitchell, who is a known friend of Kagame, he said it was immoral.
Wow.
Immoral. The word immoral is he's a member of his cabinet now. Now he's not a member of the for international cooperation, but he's a very senior member of the Conservative Party. It was immoral. The former minister for Brexit, David Davis, he will say again, he said it is immoral. He said we have got to international, a member of the Security Council, you are a member of G7. We have got a responsibility. You cannot offload our responsibility to someone else or outsource it. And especially morally, coming from a very rich country to a poor country, you offload your responsibility. So, and those are people from the same government, the same party, which after I was saying the beauty of democracy, they can criticize their own government. And also the minister of labor, actually he was saying he thought that this policy is for Boris to distract from his scandal, the party gates. So in other words, it's just a destruction, shameful, but it is a kind of a cynical policy, and that's what he called the cynical destruction. Destruction. The same. The Liberal Party. The Liberal Party did the same. The Liberal Party condemned it, and the First Minister of Scotland, Sturgeon, actually he said was horrific. He said unforgivable, and he praised those who stopped the flight to take off, and called on people to continue as we are doing to oppose it. And the spokesman for the foreign affairs of Scotland, the same as about Scotland, and he said actually he called the policy was horrific.
With all of that,
the Church of England, the head of the Church of England, immoral. It is moral. It is shameful, and even the Guardian had an editorial for the media that actually it is anti-British. That decision is anti-British. So what I'm saying is that a section, and even when you look at the public, when there was actually a survey which was made in 2021, and they said actually for the 6% of the British, they saw immigration as a positive. Against I think against that fact who are against, and also people who are thinking that they were saying you have to creating a safe route for people to come to the UK. We are more than those who want to use the deterrence into Rwanda as a means to check immigration. Meaning, the point I want to make here is that we should not really take this as a general, and of course, and I think it's what's important for our understanding in the lesson, how the system functions here, how even 2 days before the signing of the agreement, the Minister of Foreign Affairs had sent a memo saying this is with the last. Actually, they had advised against Rwanda being chosen as the destination for asylum seekers because they had put a list of countries, but Rwanda was a big amber and red. It was red. And they were even clear saying that because of that, because of what? Because of human rights violations. And they thought they were going to cost the government on its international reputation. And also, as I was saying before, they had made a note saying that there's a risk of fraud, giving 120. And of course, one beautiful thing about democracy is that civil servants can make a point different from the minister. I think that's something you have to appreciate.
Yeah.
So I did have a question for you, and the question would have been, what are the lessons Rwandans and even non-Rwandans and citizens had? But in your last talk, you really summarized it well. When you said there was a minister who said the word un-British, that was really powerful to me, because when I first saw this deal, it reminded me of the British slavery system, unfortunately, just because the notion and image of moving bodies of people across from Europe into a non-Western country, vice versa. But for young Rwandans, particularly who are not very in touch with these type of issues, what lesson can we learn from this as immigrants as well, and a lot of us undocumented immigrants?
The document of it is what we learn is scary. It's scary because when you think of what to the extent anti-immigration policies, and you see how they are gaining ground in almost all the countries. Someone was saying, when I was reading some of the papers, a minister here went to Germany and was saying, he said they are doing this to prevent this national movement take over power. But he said, by doing that, actually, you are becoming them. Because you're trying to stop them. You are doing exactly what they want. So you are not changing anything. So I think, but the two, I think, is advocacy. It is always defending our rights. Well, it's not a foregone conclusion. And we said the rights are not given; they are fought for. If you see the Black American, if you see even here how now you look at the situation here is, and I can tell you my personal the British, by the way, why I came with as a refugee is, for instance, they accept principle that there is structural racism, that is institutional racism. They accept that. And they have policy what they call positive discrimination. I mean, actually, what you call, trying to push for a certain class to go to certain levels. And I was in the bar where I am. I was a member of the called independent as well advisor group of the police. And our job was, I was representing the black community, and our job was to bring to your attention of the police if there are things that they do that actually infringe or are unacceptable in our cultures. We were to be culturally sensitive. And I was doing a training myself on cultural awareness, with the police, social services, how to respond and how to deal with people from different cultures. And so it is be integrated. I can tell them, don't be deterred off by these people, because even in Africa, we can see more racism than what you have in Europe. If you have been a refugee in Africa, but definitely have more problems. You can hear about people in Malawi, in whatever, that they just decide one time they send on them to do their business, and it will bring me down to something else. You reminded me about this, about the implication of this. Is how now the problem of this anti-immigration is there can be an issue when we spoke of thousands going to tens of thousands. So my worry is, once they are there, they can't go into agriculture. And some of the refugees are well trained, as scholars are very well educated. So if there was fair competition, they would grab all the jobs. So if we have got a problem here over they are taking our job, and that's what the key issue here. These as well more European, they say they are taking our jobs. And so what happened this class? And it brings back again to another point you made about the slaves. You remember that those who are, when they stopped slave trade, those who are caught in the ships or were taken from the masters, they are put in certain countries, Liberia, for instance, Freetown. And the problem of Sierra Leone, not Sierra or Freetown, of Liberia, where this class which came from America came to dominate the whole country.
Indigenous Africans, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and also another point which comes in is also when you think of the Indian cheap labor from India to East Africa. You can go to Uganda, where the Indians are breaking all the businesses because the advantage. So what I'm thinking is that I'm going to implications of shipping people of tens of thousands, and it would not be on the UK. Denmark is negotiating with one to do the same. And that's one of the implications is actually once Britain has done it, has gone through, others will follow.
Yeah, no, I think, Mr. Bahunga, I love this say. You said that even Denmark was or is in a process of sending like asylum seeker to Rwanda.
Negotiating.
Which means if this case AA and others versus Secretary of State for the Home Department succeeds, so that will be what we call a precedence. At the same time, I love the fact you say, and I can see, in a democratic state, you can see when the executive, the government, the minister made this deal, so the judiciary say it's not true. So that's how people have the right to petition and to stop it, to stop at least in meantime. So that's why when young people and us are advocating for a democratic state in Rwanda, it's because we want Rwanda to not invade Congo. So finally, and what I could say is that maybe people don't know Justin Bahunga once he's expressing himself in English language. He's articulate, and you can, if you have to listen to Mr. Bahunga, you have to even have a pen to write a book. Here's another book, Mr. Bahunga.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for the
what I
compliment.
can, yeah,
I'm very humbled by that.
yeah.
I'm very humbled. I'm very humbled by that compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, I love to hear always from Mr. Bahunga, and
I learned a lot today.
I'm also pleased today to have Sarah KAYINDE leading our show. Of course, she's gonna make the final words, but again, once this case is gonna be, let's say, under the heat through the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court, we'll invite you again, Mr. Bahunga. Just stay tuned, and at the same time, just be there for us in the UK to monitor this case. It's in our interest.
Yes,
Very
thank you
good,
very
excellent.
much.
So, Sarah, you have the floor.
Yes, so I was going to say thank you very much, Mr. Justin Bahunga. I learned very much today. I've been following politics on a grander scale. I've never really, for some reason, been looking into Africa, let alone East Africa, until I started to look at multipolarity versus unipolarity. And I now notice that the world is changing and Rwanda is not on the right path in my point of view. And this deal they attempted to make with UK, one of the things that I appreciate about it, even though it's not a good thing, is that it exposed the truth about Rwanda, like you said. Many Africans seemed to believe that Rwanda was a Pan-African state with a Pan-Africanist leader and a leader who cared about African people and African futures. And them seeing that same leader sell African, well, not African bodies, but other people's bodies just for money. I think that was a wake-up call for many of us to kind of start to get more involved in African politics, to look back home and to start, for me especially, to start listening to our elders and to gain the knowledge that they have and to see how we can build building blocks from that and get ready for the next generation. I'm a Canadian citizen, but like you spoke, the ongoing populism and anti-immigration sentiments, they're starting to also worry me, even though Canada is all I've known as an adult. I also know I'm not a Canadian in the same way others are Canadian. So hopefully this immigration populism can settle down and we can all work together in the countries we are in, but also it does force Rwandans, my generation, to look back and wonder, what does it mean to have a country? What does it mean to be born somewhere and be a full citizen, never wondering if those rights can be taken? So thank you very much for including me in this. I hope if there's more talks, I can be included. Lots of moments to learn. And yeah, so I'm very humbled. Thank you.